Welcome back to What Makes You Tick Best Bits. Most executives I speak to are incredibly frustrated that their job search becomes a painful experience when they reach a certain level of seniority. And the tactics that they try to use in their job search to create conversations are the same they used to use when they were much earlier in their career. And they act like an applicant and they act like a candidate. But what they don't do is build the right value up front. The shift, the reframe here is to think of yourself as a product, not a candidate, and to build a go-to-market strategy to create conversations with your ICP about the problems that you love to solve. Jacob Warwick is the best in the world at this topic. Everyone I send this to loves this. So we've taken the best part of my favorite episode and given it for you as a best bits to enjoy on a Sunday or whenever you get around to it. Enjoy the episode. I'll put a link to the full hour and a half in the show notes. Let's talk about that, because really, when we're talking about pivoting, it's about, well, what you actually go, well, what do you actually want? And a lot of the time, like you say, what people do is they're taught and like they program, and you talked about in the last episode that people go back to like default. They go back to, oh, well, last time I interviewed 10 years ago, this is the way I approached it. And it's like you're playing the game that's been designed for you to lose, where you are a candidate trying to get accepted for a job. But you've got different ways of thinking about this. And I just wonder, like, if you've turned that into a system where people can go, right, from thinking about even what do I even want in the first place to actually going and getting it. What does that look like in the world?
Okay, so let's get tactical. We talk a little bit about go-to-market strategy, which again, I assume most listeners will understand, right? So first thing you need to realize is that you're a product and you're selling a professional services deal. Right? You're selling probably 40 to 60 hours a week, maybe more if you're, in top executive jobs. You have to bundle this product up and you need to see who are the buyers, right? You can do that for companies, but can you do that for yourself? And when you don't know what to do, and like there's a lot of sales folks here, what do you send your BDRs out to do? They go talk to people and they go, hey, do you have this problem? And they say, no, get out of my inbox, right? And then they do it again and again and again. And the beautiful thing about having an outbound sales team is that you can get more data than you can just kind of on your own. Like people will make snap decisions. Hey, I interviewed for 3 companies. They all didn't like my ideas. Therefore, I'm stupid and need to change. Right? No, you just only talked to 3 people, right? Maybe you need to talk to more people. So if I'm trying to figure out what it is I want to do with my life, even if I'm just trying to find another job and I know what I want to do with my life, the key isn't my resume or my LinkedIn or the messaging that's on a website. Like by the time you write your website copy, it's too late. Like the beautiful thing about sales and BDR work is you can change it on the fly based off who you're talking to. So the number one area when someone's making a transition that I want them to monitor is the number of conversations they have. Right? So the KPI is number of conversations you can have in a week. And if we can scale that number up, whatever the original, I think I could talk to 5 new people. The mindset we want to be in is, okay, but what if you add a 0 to that? What would it take to talk to 50 new people? Now, it's not that I want you to talk to 50 people flippantly. It's I want you to go through the thought process on what it would require of you to talk to 50 people. And typically they say, oh man, I'd have to call Rich and I'd have to call Tolu and I'd have to ask them for like 5 people that they can introduce me to. And I'd have to ask those people how to introduce me. And I'd have to convince them to introduce me to people. And then now we're in the right mindset of what you need to be doing. But with 5 people, like I can get 5 people. That's fine, right? I can do outbound. Like that's probably not going to work over time because you have to do so much, right? But I want to get in that mindset. I want you to talk to a certain number of people. I usually let my clients pick that number. If that number is very large, what also happens is your time becomes more scarce. As your time becomes more scarce, you get more picky. When you get more picky, you get more clarity. Right? I don't want to talk to that person because I don't want to, oh shit, I don't want to do that. Clarity. I want to talk to more people like this because now I'm bogging my calendar down with people that aren't going to do any. Oh, I need to talk to more people like this. Now our targeting improves. So this is similar to testing messaging when you're bringing in a product to market. Like, oh, I thought the chief operating officer was the decision maker. It turns out it's a decision bought through committee by the sales leader, the CEO, the investor, and this, right? I need to build connections with the salesperson, the CEO, like all of these. And now it starts to improve your targeting when you measure your conversations, right? Now, this doesn't answer the what do you want to do with your life question, but I don't think you need to have the answer to that in order to have great conversations. So great conversation could be, Rich, you know me better than probably most of the people in my network. Now, I'm thinking about making a change. But to be honest, I don't know how to talk about it yet, but I would value your perspective because you've been in talent for so long. Like, does this path sound crazy? What do you think? Then I might say, if you were in my shoes, what would you be looking at? Now, if I ask 50 different executives that have all, let's say, been more successful than me, like this is also part of, you need to put yourself in the room, right? You're the culmination of the 5 smartest people around you kind of thing, like, and you kind of behave like them. And if those people are all dumb, like you probably are in the wrong room kind of deal. It's kind of like that. So I want to ask like 50 people or 100 people or 200 people, like, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? And I'm going to start to collect data, right? And so that data is relatively anecdotal and small scale. So we need to be mindful of that. Just because 200 people say you're dumb doesn't mean you're dumb, right? So it could just be that you're barking up the wrong tree with those people, right? And so I think this helps start the process. Don't be plastering your messaging on LinkedIn if you don't know what you want to do yet. Talk to people first, like just as you would. I'm bringing a product to market. I have my sales team practicing messaging. I have my AEs having conversations with potential buyers. They're telling me they're not interested, but they're telling me that another part of their company may be. So there's some data points there. As I talk to those people, I've noticed that these are the talk tracks that start to resonate with them. Now I'm going to put that on my resume or on my LinkedIn as something I'm interested in, right? So there's this whole process where oftentimes you don't even need to get to the resume or LinkedIn. You just start talking to people and they say, Rich comes to me. You say, Jacob, I got somebody you need to talk to right away. You should talk to Tolu. I'll go say, I'll make the warm intro for you kind of deal. And then that conversation goes, Tolu hires me and we're good to go. We don't even have to go through the other processes. So like through the challenge of trying to find out who you are, you'll likely close deals. And the cool thing about going to market with yourself versus going to market with a product is that with yourself, you just need one, right? Now, ideally, we can talk about having all your eggs in one basket. Ideally, what's going to happen is you'll have 3 or 4 interested people, and then you have to decide, which do you like more? Why? And if you can ask why 5 times, like, why do you like this? Why is that important to you? Why is that thing important to you? And so on, you're going to get to the core of clarity. This is important to me. This company is 200 million. It's on the rise. It's going to IPO. It's going to be a unicorn. It's really compelling. The culture fit was great. This one was a bigger company, but it sounded like there was a little mismatch. And maybe you're now discussing these different opportunities you have. This also creates leverage for your negotiation because you have a choice. And you might say, I'm kind of interested in this. Maybe I don't need to work for them full time. Maybe I can consult for them 10 hours a week, 10 hours a month, get a little side cash, use that learning and take this job full time. So I did that a bit with my career too, where most of my initial consulting deals started as W-2 offers that I negotiated into 1099s because I didn't actually believe in the company that much and I wanted to test the waters first. And I have a client who's chief revenue officer and had a multi-billion-dollar exit with the company, made tens of millions personally, obviously has a lot of leverage, still wants to work for some reason. I'm not going to give him a hard time for that. It's a more intellectual stimulation than the need for money. And he has a rule that while he's interviewing for other CRO roles, I won't work for a company unless we consult for 3 months first. And then he's consulting for 2 or 3 companies at a time and deciding which team he thinks has the best potential to grow. Now, this is obviously a great first world problem to have, but the point that I'm making is that it's not always all or nothing. So you could, man, I'm in this tech job that I hate and I'm in a spreadsheet all day. I'm doing Dreamforce or Salesforce admin work, right? Far from the dream. No offense, Salesforce, right? But you're doing admin work and you're like, man, this is miserable. And I want to be doing marketing instead of this admin work for sake of discussion. Let's just start talking to people about marketing. Is that a crazy path for me? Start finding mentors. They start hiring you. Like, what are some of the things I could take off your plate? They start hiring you for 5 hours. Maybe you just start with 5 hours to build your experience and then pivot, right? And then, so at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel of your miserable job. It doesn't always need to be all or nothing. It doesn't need to wait for the layoff, although the layoff is usually a great awakening for folks.
Yeah.
That's why we saw this resurgence over COVID of this like great resignation in realignment of the workforce. Like that was a big eye-opening moment for folks. And then of course, seeing people working on the beach making $1 million a year probably doesn't help, right? Like how come they can do that? What do I need to do? I guess I need to buy a podcast setup and start to look like I'm an influencer, right? But you can see this like little bits at a time. Sometimes your hand is forced, but if you can create a light at the end of the tunnel for yourself, that can get your mindset in the right space versus just being trapped. So tacticals, your KPI should be number of conversations you can have in a week. In order to build your conversation number and get that metric up, when you have a conversation with anyone in your network, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. 2/3 of that conversation should be focused on them. So if it's a 30-minute conversation, I like 22. I don't want to go a little overkill. 22 minutes should be about them. Then they go, man, we've been talking about me and how you can help me this whole time. Like, what about you? This is the power of reciprocity. Like, it is a reciprocity imbalance. So people are more likely to help you. Now, ideally, if we really want to trigger the reciprocity piece, as I'm talking to Rich and I'm learning about, hey, what are some people I can introduce you to or some things, I'm going to come up with ideas and ideally be able to make introductions to you while we're still talking. So we're on the phone like, hey, Rich, I got to introduce you to Tolu. Let me send a text real quick. Are you open to it?
Mhm.
Now, this does a couple things too. I get your phone number. Now, for you scumbag BDRs out there, do not abuse that. I'm going to say you use this for good and not evil. But so the one time I say, hey, Rich, I'm going to introduce you to Tolu. I make a text. Tolu and Rich get introduced. Now, I'm the one that's top of mind when that happens as the value is created there. And then as they talk, I'm remembered again. So I stay top of mind. Now, Rich has a reciprocity imbalance because I've made value for him, but he hasn't made value for me. And so as we continue, we're 22 minutes into the conversation, he says, well, what can I do for you? And I might say, I'm really curious about this path in my career. Do you happen to know 2 or 3 other people that I can talk to? Right. And ideally, because I just sent you something on the phone, you're like, hey, I don't want you to have to think about this after the call. Maybe there's some folks you can text right now. And then I'm creating value for Rich too, because he's going to stay top of mind with these people as I continue to provide that value. So I know that's long-winded, but the 2/3 piece is important because if I instead made that conversation mostly about me, Rich wouldn't share his contacts because it would make him look bad because I'm selfish. But if all I did was provide value and provide value and provide value, Rich could make that that introduction because it's also going to make him look good. So there's the reciprocity imbalance, but it's also about creating win-wins for everyone here. And just essentially letting Rich know I'm not a scumbag and I'm not going to burn your friends out. The other piece that's important here is having someone's phone number is pretty important. And again, this isn't for abuse purposes. Let's talk to your go-to-market marketers out there. What's your open rate on a text message send versus an email send? Right? It's like 5-to-1 difference. Like a text gets read like 90% of the time versus an email it's like 20, right? So if I want to stay top of mind, I want to vibrate your pocket at the right time, right? That attention is very valuable. And so the other thing that I love about a text message versus an email is that in an email, people treat it too formally. They go way too deep and they kiss your ass. And Rich probably knows this better than anyone else. Rich, I want to thank you for the conversation we have. It reminds me about these 3 experiences that I've had in the past about how I grew XYZ company from 20 million to 30 million, and I grew this company. And I bet that I would be a great candidate for you. What's the next step? And it's this long monologue. The first sentence you read, you go, I know what this is about, and you ignore it. But the beautiful thing about a text message is like, I get to say, hey, Rich, had a few other ideas open to chat. I have to keep it tight, and then it has to be more provocative because of that. It's got a few more ideas. I wonder what those ideas are, right? Now I have an opportunity to get more value from Jacob. I'm going to want to talk to him versus a long ass email about your credentials. Absolutely wrong. So people are always focused that I've noticed. They're too focused on being impressive and they're not focused on alignment. So they're impressing in that email. And even if you do send an email, it's something like, hey, thanks for the chat. I'm going to put some thought into it. I'll let Tolu know what we talked about too. just to reinforce the name and build reputation. I'll get back to you with what I learned. That's it. 2-3 sentences. That's how you write a thank you email to recruiters, right? I'll let you know how it goes when I talk to those folks. Then I'm also setting the expectation that I'm going to talk to you again. So I get to control the pace of the conversations we have. If I flake on you because I'm not interested, well, there's your answer. You know, there was an alignment. Fine. Right. But at least I have control instead of when do you want to follow up? Hell, I don't know when I want to follow up. Like, you tell me. Like, when you have value, when you have something of value to share with me, let's talk. Right. So you're not going to get a response when you say that. So tactical pieces, increase your conversations, spend 2/3 of the conversation on the other person, not yourself. The easiest way to remember that's 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. You have to ask really smart questions to get them talking so you can get the information necessary. That's going to trigger a reciprocity imbalance. That's going to make them more likely to introduce you to somebody. When you get that introduction, I would lean towards a text versus an email, specifically because it's going to increase your likelihood of getting a response. Then I would respond with short messages from there only when you have value to provide. And sometimes that value is as simple as, hey, Rich, I talked to Tolu. What a great dude. Thanks for the intro. And that's it. And Rich could choose to ghost me. Like, duly noted. Yeah, Tolu's fine. Right. Or he could say, yeah, Tolu is a great guy. Right. And then I get to follow up and say, did Tolu happen to talk to you about that project he's working on? Provocative question. He's like, no, what is that? Now we're building rapport. Now we're going back and forth in text. It's fine. It's not, when do you want to talk again about that job opportunity? Right. So that's the flow that I like to see, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this needs to be a habit, whether you have a job or not. So the thing I love about the conversations KPI, when you're super urgent, you've been out of work for 6 months, you don't know how you're going to pay the bills. That number should be 40 or 50 calls a week, right? Not 40 or 50 application, 40 or 50 calls. Communities like Pavilion or CMO Huddles or Chief or whatever communities you're in can help perpetuate that because you already have something in common. They're not going to do the work for you, but you could say, you know, hey, I've been talking to some other folks in Chief. Here's some value that I've given them. Are you open to chat? Like, ideally, that can help perpetuate some conversations. Again, you should temper your expectations, because if you call 100 people, 100 people aren't going to be awesome, right? Your success rate's maybe 5%, right? Which is still stronger than an outbound application, right? So what we're modifying, we're optimizing for is a percentage of improvement here, so that I can decrease the time to you landing a job and getting paid again. Because for me, if I can knock 1 month off of an executive's job search time, I've made them $50,000. Now, all of a sudden, my fees aren't that bad, right? And it compounds over time. And I can shorten a job search 4 weeks, no problem, right? 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I actually want to shorten job searches so I can extend the negotiation so I can drive their compensation up. But we can talk about that at another time. But that's the flow. Then when you're in a position and you're working your ass off, just throttle down your KPI of conversations to like 2. Like, I can take 1 coffee chat and I could take 1 random introduction, and let me see, can I give back to someone on my team? Can I give back to a mentor? Can I give back to someone who showed up for me in some way? And you don't necessarily need to have like a complex CRM to remind you of this, right? There are triggers that I've set for myself. I do a lot of travel. And as I travel, I don't expect other people to think this way, but when I drive through Sacramento, I think about the guy who took me in when I was homeless and let me live in his garage. And so when I drive through Sacramento, I have a bias for action to contact that guy. And I just say, hey, Eric, how's it going? Like, was thinking about you, just drove through, and reminded me of that time, right? And then I drive through Davis, and I used to live in Davis for a little bit and commute down into San Francisco. And I think about the people I lived with in Davis, or the people that I was partners with. My first mentor, Aaron Glinsky, lived there. Now he lives in Detroit. And I say, hey, how are you and your wife, Dina, doing? It's just this like bias for action, not because a CRM told me check in. It was, I drove past a thing. It reminded me of you. People love to have that feeling too. Like, one gal bought me a Chipotle burrito when I was like fired. And like kind of helped me. It was the day I got laid off. She bought me this Chipotle burrito, and I never forgot that. And then like 5 or 6 years later, I helped her land a $300,000 a year job. And I didn't charge her or anything. I just remembered the kindness she gave me. And now whenever I go to Chipotle, I think of Patricia. And I don't know why. It's just like ingrained in my head. This is probably some psychosis, but I'm hoping this is an actionable tip for folks. Like, oh, I remember my time back at Salesforce. Here were some people I actually enjoyed during that time. And then I can catch up and have conversations. And again, most people aren't going to respond. We're all busy. You should set that expectation. So I guess this would be step 2 of this plan: bias for action plus surrender the outcome. You do the thing that needs to happen. If they don't get back to you, don't cry about it, right? Doesn't stop you from doing it again. There are people in my phone. I have over 3,000, 3,500 or 4,000 executives in my phone. Like, I counted. I've done a lot of texting. And I can think back, like I'll look through threads with some of them and I'll have texted them 5 times with no response. And then every once in a while I'll get, hey, Jacob, I was thinking about you. Like, you just ignored the last 5 messages over the last year and a half, you ass. Like, why now? I'm actually going to meet with someone a little later today who's done that to me. And he's like, hey, Jacob, we need coffee. And I said, you know what? You have to come to me. That was the rule. And he's like, sure, see you on Thursday. So, but he didn't, because when you do the reach out, if you're trying to help somebody, it's not annoying. So sometimes I'll send a message, hey, I've seen some changes in the market. I've seen that CROs are making this now. Here's a couple examples of some landings that happened. Right? Just wanted you to know. No expectation of a response. I don't need to start a conversation. I'm just creating content. I guess this is similar to creating content on LinkedIn, I guess, or creating content on YouTube or podcasts. You're creating value and you're putting it out there. And when the timing is right, it comes back to you. So you're marketing yourself in that. So you can market through text message and through your relationships, people that are already likely going to have a stronger open rate than doing it cold.
I love that thing about having no expectation, because I think that's where so many people get tripped up, because they're like, oh, but I text them, they didn't text me back, I called. But it's like, it's okay. Like, do the things that you're meant to do and the right things happen. One thing I wanted to ask you about, though, is that you talked about giving value, right? And I think that for a lot of people, they don't necessarily know how to identify what would be valuable to someone else. So especially if I'm dealing with someone who is, an exec, like a CEO, what do I, who might be quite junior, have that could be valuable to that person? So how would you help someone to identify the value that they can give to someone? So
oftentimes the value that you can provide to others isn't your value, but others' value that you've heard too. So the lazy way of doing this is, hey, Rich, I saw an article that you should read, and I send that to you, right? Which still can be very effective. Like, Rich sent me some podcasts that I've watched with Daniel Priestley and a couple others, and I found them very valuable. And it was great that he was thinking about me in that, right? But as this becomes a habit, it compounds. That's why I'm very clear that habit and discipline are very important for this. So if it's 50 when you're out of work and still 2 when you're in work, you have to have the habit. Because what happens is, as you talk to these new people, and sometimes your gateway is, hey, I happen to know Tolu. I want to talk about how tall this guy is, right? Sometimes it can be soft and just have a casual conversation, right? But as you talk to more people, you become a vessel of what you're learning from them, right? Especially if you're spending 2/3 of the time speaking. So the reason I framed it the way I did about conversations about listening more and providing value in that is because it makes the rest of it inevitable. You will naturally become more valuable as you learn from other people, as you naturally learn. And this happens in interview processes too. Even if you go through an interview, let's say you're interviewing for a top job that you probably didn't have a shot at, but you got through the process. The CEO at Stripe was talking to you, right? And I've clients like this all the time. CEO of a Stripe, or we had a conversation with Zuckerberg the other day and Sam Altman, and like, we've had conversations with these top executives. Even if they don't get the job, I get to say, hey, Rich, I was talking to Sam Altman the other day, and his focus was this. Now, Rich is learning through what I learned from Sam, and he's got the inside track on what's happening at ChatGPT. So I don't even have the value, but do I? I learned the lesson. But that also, not that we just want to name drop into perpetuity. I don't want you to all become Tony Robbins, right? We're just name dropping everyone and distracting the point, right? But it's, hey, I learned this thing about this this talent recruiter that was in the sales space that I thought would be interesting to you. Do you want to talk about it? Right? Or I saw this post, and eventually that knowledge flows through you. It's like, I'm strong at negotiation, not because I'm a master at negotiation, not because I've got some PhD. I'm not Chris Voss. Like, I don't have this 30-year tenure doing negotiations for a living. I'm strong at negotiations because I've been the source of thousands of executive conversations. So I've seen it and built that. So I've become a vessel of that information. And then I know we're going to talk about AI a little bit later too, but that's what makes training of AI unique. It's the specialty knowledge that you put into it, not just using it blankly.
Thank you for listening and watching this Best Bits short. If you like this, tune in next Sunday for our next special part of our favorite episodes. And if you love the main podcast, every Thursday we introduce you to a new virtual mentor so you can hear their career story and answers to the biggest questions in tech. See you on the next episode.